All right, yo, 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 yo. What's up? What's up? What's up? Give up the rock, my fellow revolutionaries. Uh, Today is Friday and a very, very special day on the calendar for the working class. It is the eve before the weekend, a sacred time where we all get some reprieve from our servitude to capital, a time in the week where capital is not meant to touch us. And so we are free from its grip and its bind. So, yo, 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 wings of cheese. What's up? What's up? What's up? And yeah, a welcome and happy Friday to you. And I'd just like to take this opportunity to acknowledge workers, past, present, and emerging. And yeah, just give you a shout out to the working class generally. So today, we're going to do something very special. Um, we're going to go through Happy Friday. So, and yeah, we are going to go through and have a look sees, like very superficially, obviously, but like we're going to have a look sees at the JFK files, at least what the general consensus is going on about it. Like there's 60,000 pages of information that have been released as part of this. Like obviously there have been subsequent, sorry, there have been previous releases of this type of information in various forms, but in this regard and this time, Trump has made good on his promise. He was able to, I don't know, broker a deal with RFK Jr. and get him to come over to Team Trump. And one of the kind of conditions for him to come on over was that he was going to release the files on the assassination of JFK. And so Trump has made good on that promise. But we are going today to not just look at these JFK files that have been released, the assassination files, but like we're also going to kind of draw an understanding as to why Trump is doing this. Is Trump just like altruistic, and like feels sorry for the Kennedys, and like wants to kind of release this information to put the conversation to bed? It is quite the national mythology over there in the US of A. And so, like, the question really has to be asked, like, why is he doing this? Like other people have done it in dribs and drabs. Like, there's been even like kind of laws and statute passed about like releasing this information. But Trump, via executive order, which seems to be his weapon of choice at the moment, has, made it very clear that this information is to be fully released by the National Archives Association. And so he has done so. He's made good on his promise to the Kennedy family, or to RFK especially. And like, so people will now be trawling over this information for the weeks to come, I would say, to try and pick out any gold in it. But the initial kind of upshot that you're getting from people, like media outlets and commentators and stuff like that, is like there's nothing very damning that has come out yet. Nothing that really kind of puts the matter to bed that it was a lone wolf, or a broader conspiracy or something else. Like there's no nail in the coffin. There's no silver bullet in any of this that really affirms or denies, confirms or denies anything. If anything else, it adds further questions, or like just kind of allows people more information to back up their feelings on the matter and what they believe to be the position in regards to their own personal theories on the matter. So, first of all, we'll have a look at kind of the event itself. we just get a general understanding because, like, as an Australian and as someone who wasn't born in the 60s or alive in the 60s or anything like that, like, I don't know much about the actual event itself. I would say that, like, most people that are watching this were not alive when this even happened. And so, like, might not be across all of it. So we'll just quickly watch something that details the event itself to give us some context. And then we'll go through and we'll listen to kind of a historian, like a YouTube historian, and like his take, like he's looked through the files, which will give us a kind of an understanding of where people's opinion is at the moment. And then we're going to go through and we're going to talk about, like, why this has happened. Like, why is it being released now? And we're going to make some, accusatory statements as to why Trump is really doing this. Let's be honest. LOF. First comment already got sent it. We are off to a great start. Jag, I expect nothing less from you. Let's be honest. So I can only imagine what you're trying to say. You rogue. You absolute rogue. So yeah, let's turn over to a bit of history, shall we? So we can all have a little bit of context as to this event, because it's, like I said, I don't think it's clear to all of us. So let's have a little look at that just to give us some grounding, and then we'll continue the adventure from there. There's a lot to kind of pack into today's stream, so let's get the roll on, shall we?
Parkland Hospital, there has been a shooting. Parkland Hospital has been advised to stand by for a severe gunshot wound.
That's an unconfirmed report that the president was hit in the head. The president's wife, Jackie Kennedy, was not hurt. She walked into the hospital at her husband's stretcher side.
The President of the United States is dead.
The shooting of John F. Kennedy didn't...
Is that what you wrote originally? It's because the Bush family already cleaned house, eh? Or is that the YouTube comment section appropriate version?
just kill a president. It shattered a nation, devastated the global community, and was one of the most shocking public events of the 20th century.
Right.
It happened in 1963, and yet the murder of President Kennedy remains to this day a subject of fascination. On November 22, 1963, the President and the First Lady journeyed to Dallas on a campaign trip. Accompanying the Kennedys in the motorcade through the city were Governor John Connally and his wife Nellie.
No way. Dallas? Really? Well, well, well. I'm pretty sure I've been to Dallas before. Yeah, not the type of place I expected it to be either. And like parts of it very like hipster too, I thought. Which is not like the stereotypical view that we have of Texans, I guess. Good afternoon, comrades. It is an excellent day to further the class struggle. Yes. Yes, it is. And like it is Friday here. And as I say, Marxist Dad, the eve of the most sacred time in the week for the worker, the weekend, the time that we are free from the clutches of capital. So happy Friday to you, Marxist Dad, from Australia. And today we're going to be looking into matters relating to JFK and the JFK files. Like we're not going to go and investigate them ourselves. We don't have time to go through 60,000 pages worth of documents. That would be one hell of a stream marathon though, I'm sure. But like, yeah, we're just going to have like get a grip on the conversation that's going on around this issue. And then we're going to relate it back to like, you know, what's happening currently on the scene and why Trump is really doing this. So like maybe that will relate us back to the class struggle a little bit. Marxist dad. You never know. So, yeah, we're just getting some grasp on the history and the event itself before we trawl over all the conjecture and speculation over to what really went down on that fateful day.
As it moved through Dealey Plaza, the presidential limousine was fired upon. Governor Connolly was wounded. President Kennedy, who was hit twice, was killed. The dramatic course of events led many to wonder whether a conspiracy was afoot. A plethora of conspiracy theories about Kennedy's assassination have proved, nevertheless, an enduring phenomenon.
Oh, yeah. Yo, yo, yo is 4IS in the house. It's the veritable who's who today of the YouTube group. How you going, 4IS? Welcome. We are going over today JFK's assassination. My granny would tell me about this day often. Wow. Yeah, and it really seems like, it's something that, captured the nation, like for obvious reasons kind of thing. And especially like in the heat of, I guess you could say that, in the heat of the Cold War. Yeah, like, so much flying around there. Like, America at a point, it was a huge moment in the history of the country. Yeah. So like, a lot of stuff to go around, like, because obviously America, East versus West kind of stuff going on there. And so like in an area, in a time of such rivalry, this type of event has more meaning or a different meaning than it would like today or something like that. It was the heat of the moment. Oh, stop it. 4IS. See what you did there. It was the heat of the Cold War moment. Telling me what your heart meant. The heat of the moment. Very good. All right. So we're going over just to get some context from the day or the time period itself, to ground us before we go into full speculation overdrive. And like, we'll even go and have a chat to ChatGPT later as well about this, if it sees fit, and like maybe we'll go down some hallucination territory. The 60s are often glorified, but it was really pretty fucked up time. Yeah, it was pretty heavy time. Yeah. A lot going on. Okay? A lot going on. But like, compared to today's standards though, like in terms of like working class, strength and power, a golden age, some would say. Definitely not the Gilded Age, the 60s, let's say that. And it's definitely not the age where, tech bro bourgeois members reign supreme over society. So, definitely a different time, let's say. Anyway.
Americans, the murder of John F. Kennedy would remain one of the most wrenching public events of their lifetimes.
At Ashley and Martin,
Oh,
we know
my
things can make you
God.
feel like you're losing it. But with our money-back guarantee, your hair doesn't have to be one of them. Keep your hair on. Consult the doctors at Ashley and Martin.
Bring the indoors outdoors with
Two
Ninja.
ads.
Barbecues are better with electric
Outrageous.
grills that sear and char like a gas grill.
Still no premium. That's right, Jerry Poppins. Yeah, boo. MLK, Malcolm X, JFK, and RFK. You bum. Well,
John
feel
Fitzgerald
free to join on Patreon and become a paid member, Jerry Poppins. And like, I will assure you that your money will directly go to YouTube Premium. But like, put your money where your mouth is, mate. Let me just say.
Kennedy was the 35th President of the United States, serving from 1961 until his assassination in 1963 at the age of 46.
Such a young president, right? Far out.
Attractive
46.
and charismatic, Kennedy was one of the most popular and youngest presidents in American history. On Thursday the 21st, the President and First Lady arrived in San Antonio to deliver a dedication speech for U.S. Air Force School of Aerospace Medicine at Brooks.
Hey, I'll give Jerry Poppins all the paperwork that he wants. Hey, you can be my accountant for me if you will.
Air Force Base.
Oh, this one's going to be a bit slow.
Kennedy
I don't know if we
expressed
can watch the whole
modern,
thing.
liberal, and sometimes idealistic views during his presidency,
Yeah, let's check out
giving
those
some of the most memorable and profound
liberal
speeches.
ideals. Hey, let's check this out. Like I was asking ChatGPT about this before, so let's go on. So here I had asked basically before, had JFK been speaking about anything controversial or engaging in any policies or decisions before his assassination? Okay, so this is ChatGPT's version of events. Young indeed compared to today's. What have you called that? Gerontoxy. I haven't heard of that one. Gerontoxy. I'm sure I'm not saying that properly, but that's hilarious. I've got a feeling my last comment about my granddad was censored. Well, yes, I haven't seen anything in there. The piano score is good, but it's going to be a little bit slow. That historic. So like, let's paint the picture for us, and like with what like ChatGPT thinks were like the big kind of things that JFK was kind of looking into that was controversial at the time of his presidency / assassination. Okay. Gerontocracy. I've never heard of that term, and I'm assuming it's just like old people running society. That's a great term. Let's have a look here.
Gerontocracy.
Gerontocracy. Yeah, ruled by elders. That's great. Yeah, it's a bit like that. Like, especially you got Biden, you got Trump, like, geriatric control overload kind of thing. Where were we? Here we were. Okay, so number one they've got here, or ChatGPT has delivered to us, our large language model of choice, is conflict with the CIA and the deep state, like kind of thing. So after the Bay of Pigs invasion, a disastrous CIA-backed attempt to overthrow Fidel Castro, Kennedy fired CIA Director Alan Dulles and vowed to splinter the CIA into 1,000 pieces and scatter it into the wind. That's like the most famous one that I've heard. Is just like he was up against the CIA and he just like said he was going to dismantle that organization, and like, the rest is history kind of thing. He was skeptical of US intelligence agencies and began limiting their influence. Many see this as a key reason for their involvement in events. All right, so that's like number one, and that's like the most popular one, I think, to be honest. And I can see why ChatGPT's put that in first of order there. And like, I just want to say, like, and this is going to set up for later conversation, like, see the key relevance or importance put on the idea that he was skeptical of US intelligence agencies. This is going to become a running theme through our analysis of like what this is why this is all meaningful for Trump, and like what is going to be happening over the next 4 years, I would say, for you Americans, if not the broader world. Vietnam War policy. Now, I think this one is rather interesting because I wasn't aware of this, but like while his advisors pushed for deeper US involvement in Vietnam, JFK reportedly wanted to withdraw American troops and signed a directive starting to pull out 1,000 troops from by the end of 1963. After his assassination, Lyndon B. Johnson reversed this, leading to full-scale US intervention. Some believe JFK's stance made him a threat to the military-industrial interests. Well. Another big kind of like player in the capitalist world order and the capitalistic machine there. Last comment was, coincidentally, Marx's granddad died on the same day as JFK. Never met either of them. Died before I was born. Oh, Marxist granddad. So like your actual granddad. And you can't write Marxist granddad just like you can't write Marxist dad. That's interesting. Died on the same day. Interesting. How dare they try to interfere with the heroin trade? Yeah, I know, right? Yes, there seems to be a lot of elements of like, profiteering through rackets. Like, let's be honest, not, markets, but like, almost organized crime in a way. Interests of this nature that needed to be protected. Correct. Can't type that word. Yeah, well, we are a watched channel here too, so keep your eyes out, ladies and gentlemen. The AI is censoring us. Peace talks with the Soviet Union. In his June 1963 American University speech, Kennedy called for peaceful coexistence with the USSR. Interesting. Breaking from the Cold War hawkish rhetoric. He had back channel negotiations with Khrushchev. That's interesting. To de-escalate the test. I wonder what ChatGPT constitutes as back channel negotiations. So they just had the line to one another without all the extra, bureaucrats and everyone around. That's interesting. The military-industrial complex had reason to oppose this, as continued Cold War tensions were profitable. A lot of speculation going on there by ChatGPT today. Relations with the mafia. Same reason RFK died, I think. The illicit trade and too soft on communism. Yeah, that was another interesting assassination. A little bit more behind closed doors, that one. But yeah, cause for much speculation nonetheless. The more so, actually. So relations with the mafia, his administration, particularly his brother, was aggressively pursuing organized crime figures. And then the mafia had worked with the CIA on assassination attempts against Castro, and they were enraged when JFK didn't follow through on eliminating Castro after the Bay of Pigs. Interesting, because it ended up being like a mafia person apparently, who shot the assassin, JFK's assassin, Oswald. So like some strange stuff going on there with the mafia. Let's be honest. Some theories suggest mobsters, possibly in collaboration with rogue CIA elements, were involved in his assassination. A lot of conjecture here, seriously. Yeah, boy, was Booze Bandit from way back. Yeah, boy. Okay, or at least his dad was. Yes. Well, like a lot of people, I think, were in the 60s as well. Old Jack Ruby. Yes. Apparently, a mafia associated figure looking to get justice for the Kennedys, apparently. So, and number 6, they've got Israel and nuclear weapons. Whoa. Hey, I don't want to say that word too many times because we will get censored, but here is the Israel, popping up its head again. Kennedy clashed with Israel over its secret nuclear weapons program. He demanded international inspections and threatened to cut off U.S. support. Whoa. Some theories suggest this put him at odds with powerful pro-Israel elements. Very interesting. So like really he was, maybe had his finger in too many pies at one point, and like, it was rather convenient. And I guess one of the themes that you'll see, I guess like from the conversation that's so far coming out of the files, is that like there seems to be a lot of incompetence on the side of intelligence services and CIA and such to kind of stop this event from happening, basically. And like they were across Oswald, they were watching him, and like they knew potentially even what he was up to. But like, they didn't really do anything to stop him. He did everything wrong. Yeah, apparently. Like, look at that list, eh? Like just one of those points is enough to get you popped, let alone 6, like, kind of thing. So yeah, interesting nonetheless. Interesting nonetheless. So let's go and have a look at historians' take now, kind of on what the conversation is coming out of the files. He's analyzed a few files. We'll see if he's got anything to offer us that is of substance. Let's have a look.
Is the release by the National Archives of the so-called JFK files. These are tens of thousands of pages of documents, many of which we have not seen before. Yes, some of them have been seen before, but maybe were redacted or not fully released. So some of this is not new, but a lot of it is new. And so I think in the context of history, it's important for us to talk about this. And I just want to say a couple of things up front about all of this. Number one, obviously with the amount of information that's been released, and it's only been out for, at this point, less than 24 hours, there's no way we know everything that's in there. All the details, it's going to be days and weeks as people. And I want to say just my initial reaction based on what I've seen so far and based on what I've seen people talk about so far. A couple of just brief observations, and then we're going to dive into some of the
This source was provided by Jerry Poppins, and he has suggested that I pay for my own premium with a winky face emoji. And like, I would just like to say back at you, Jerry Poppins, no, I will not. I refuse to. That is your job, but thank you very much for providing this source. There may be a couple of sources today that Jerry Poppins provided. He is part of the research team here at the MysterE channel. And like, we're lucky to have him. So thank you very much, Jerry Poppins. And I will wait for your check in the mail. Thank you.
The specifics about this. Number one, if yesterday morning you woke up believing that Lee Harvey Oswald alone killed John F. Kennedy, there's nothing that's going to change your mind about that. If yesterday morning you woke up believing that there was some kind of conspiracy, especially involving the CIA, to kill John F. Kennedy, there's nothing that changed your mind about that. I have a feeling that because of our biases, because of just human nature, there's nothing here that is so remarkable as to change someone's mind. So the people, myself included, who believe that Lee Harvey Oswald alone killed John F. Kennedy are going to point to specific things within these documents that are going to back that up. People who believe that the CIA was behind it have things that they're pointing to that says, look, this proves it. And the people who feel that there were other shooters involved are going to say, well, nothing here changes my mind about that. All right, one of the big ones on the conspiracy side of things that everybody...
Just quickly on that one, because I wasn't really aware of this until I started researching it, because like, I've heard like all these accounts that were like, there's bullets coming from like several different directions and like all this sort of stuff. So from what I understand is like, the official report is that there were like 3 shots fired by Oswald on the day from the book depository. I'm pretty honest that he reckons it's a Rorschach test. I don't know what that test is for us. Please to divulge. But yes, so there were like 3 shots fired. So like, this guy fired the first shot, missed, and then like hit him again twice. Like after that, apparently. Like, you know, like the one went through his neck or shoulder or something like that into the governor that was sitting in the car as well. And then the other one was the one that, you know, quite famously and graphically kind of blew his head off all over the car and his missus. So like, and there are witness statements that like they're hearing gunfire coming from, there was like 5 or 6 shots heard from witnesses that are on the grassy knoll and around the area and stuff like that. And like, they've heard gunshots coming from other directions and all this sort of stuff. So like, you know, they don't make them like they used to. What exactly? Guns or conspiracies? But like, yeah, there's a lot of speculation there about like even how many gunshots there were and stuff like that, because like, you know, not everyone had an iPhone back in the 60s apparently, and so they don't have a lot of footage. They don't have a lot of people taking like pictures, and like a lot of it is eyewitness accounts, and like, you know, in traumatic circumstances, people's recollections of things, they say, do change wildly. So, you know, something to think about.
But he's already pointing to is this series of documents. This is one of them, and then I'll show you another one talking about this guy named Gary Underhill, which, first of all, I'm not entirely sure we even know if this is a real name or if this is just like some CIA name, Mr. Underhill being a common name that people like to use for such things. They even use it in Lord of the Rings and in the movie Fletch, or Fletch Lives. I think it's Fletch. But it talks about this guy, Gary Underhill, who the day after the assassination left Washington in a hurry. Late in the evening, he showed up at the home of some friends in New Jersey. He was very agitated. A small clique within the CIA.
Quite the marksman, eh? Just like the kid. Oh, what was his name? In Pennsylvania. That took shots at Trump from like 200 yards away or something like that through a crowd and everything. Like, quite the marksman these people were. So apparently he was military trained, though. Lee Harvey Oswald. Yeah, trained as a marksman, actually, in the military. Did some military service. Like I said, they don't make him like they used to. Right. Got it. Yes, apparently. And like, not only that, but a commie too. A dirty commie. Like, you can't have that type of stuff going on. And like, I don't know why they don't make more of a deal about that. Because like, he apparently, good old Oswald, had tried to defect to Belarus, I want to say. So he was in the Soviet Union, married a Russian woman, and apparently became disillusioned with life over there. I don't know how true this is, and then came back to America. Other stories I've heard about that is more like he couldn't actually live in Russia. The Russians didn't want him, actually. He couldn't stay there. And so he came back here, or came back to the US with his missus, and was kind of like a little bit, I don't know, he was disenfranchised with capitalism and stuff like that. And like had tried to go to Cuba, actually, and had tried to get to Cuba through Mexico like a month or two before the assassination attempt and all this sort of stuff. Here, it is roll call. Hello, Ollie Atlas, and welcome to today's stream. We're going to go through kind of like what public opinion is going on with regards to these JFK files that have come out, just to get a snapshot of what's going on so far. He received his rifle marksmanship training in the U.S. Marine Corps. There you go. If you believe Stanley Kubrick and Sergeant Hartman. So that's interesting, isn't it? Marine. Hardcore. But like, yeah, defected and like not happy with ye old capitalism. Went over to the USSR and even tried to go to Cuba. So like, you know, definitely not happy with the American way of life for some reason. Poor Oswald. Very, very, very strange series of events going on there, and linked to obviously the commies, the dirty commies, of course.
Was responsible for the assassination he confided, and he was afraid for his life and would probably have to leave the country. Less than 6 months later, Underhill was found shot to death in his Washington apartment. The coroner ruled it a suicide. And then there's more to it, and there's another document. Let me pull it up here. So here's a little more about it. He had been an intelligence agent during World War II, was recognized authority on limited warfare and small arms, a researcher and writer on military affairs. He was on a first-name basis with many of the top brass in the Pentagon. He was also on intimate terms with a number of high-ranking CIA officials. He was one of the agency's unpeople who performed special assignments. At one time, he had been a friend of Samuel Cummings, the arms broker. The numbers among its customers, the CIA, and ironically, Klan Sporting Goods of Chicago, from whence the mail-order Carcano allegedly was purchased by Oswald. The friends whom Underhill visited say he was sober but badly shook. They say he was attributed the Kennedy murder to a CIA clique which was carrying out a lucrative racket in gun running, narcotics, and other contraband, and manipulating political intrigue to serve its own ends. Kennedy supposedly got...
So there you go. So this guy, this CIA insider, has accused another in-group within the CIA as carrying out the assassination. They were involved with drugs and contraband and all that sort of stuff, funding various CIA campaigns. And this has come out, apparently. This is one of the big documents, apparently, that comes out. So he was shaken up after the assassination attempt, and then 6 months later winds up dead in a hotel room, apparently. Suicide. So they say.
Wind of something was going on, was killed before he could blow the whistle on it. here's just my thoughts on all of this. First of all, this is a great example of if you think the CIA was involved in Kennedy, this in your mind, and I've seen a bunch of people already tell me this on social media, this proves it. This document right here is proof. And to kind of back this up a little further, there are claims that I've seen online that I've seen the man's death certificate, first of all, I should say. And I read the death certificate, and it said that it was ruled a suicide by automatic pistol. And it says that in the thing. It doesn't say on the death certificate where the wound was. But I've seen claims of people saying that, he was... it was on the opposite side of his head from what handedness he had, and that the bullet was behind his ear. So, a couple conclusions from that. Number one, if that's true, was he suicided? Yeah, that's possible. But I haven't seen any evidence of that. I think right now all we have is a whole lot of people claiming things. We've got a CIA document here that says that his friends say he said such and such. In a court of law, that's completely meaningless and completely... it's not something you can use to prove anything. Some friends said he said these things, and then 6 months later he ended up dead. So first of all, if I'm the CIA and I'm trying to cover up a crime and it was important enough for me to take out the president, I'm not letting this guy go 6 months after he made the claim before I take him out.
I guess this is a very controversial topic. So apparently you can't say anything in this chat anymore. So I don't know if people are constantly being censored here and are trying to say things and are being blocked. So if that's you, then I'm sorry. But... yes, the AI is watching this conversation, let me just say.
I take him out. If I took out the president that soon, I can take out a rogue CIA agent a little sooner than 6 months later. So to me, first of all, just based on logic alone, that doesn't make any sense to me. If he was taken out, and I'm leaving the door open to that possibility, even though I haven't seen any proof of that beyond people claiming that the bullet wound was in such a place that he couldn't have shot himself. I haven't seen any evidence that's actually true. Just, again, people claiming it. Even assuming that he was taken out by somebody, it doesn't seem connected to Kennedy to me because the 6 month wait makes no sense based on those things. So I'm just saying that the whole point in this is that people are going to believe whatever they want to believe about this stuff. I look at that and I don't see the connection. I see a whole lot of nothing there. Just like I see a whole lot of nothing when I look at the FBI files investigating all sorts of claims about people who said they saw Adolf Hitler in Argentina in 1946. Just because they investigated it, just because they wrote down that somebody claimed to see it, doesn't mean it actually happened. It just means they had to investigate it, and it means somebody said that. I can say anything, and I could say it to a CIA agent, and I could say, you know what, I had a friend who told me that they heard from LBJ's lips that he was involved, and that would go into the record. That doesn't make it true. It just makes it a claim. And to me, as somebody who doesn't have the view that this was some elaborate CIA hit, I just don't see that based on this. Now, here's what I will say. Based on some of the other documents, and we'll look at these in a second, I understand why the CIA didn't want this stuff released. Because they look really, really bad in the documents that we've seen already. It's very, very clear that they were well aware of who Lee Harvey Oswald was, of his connections to people, prominent communists and things of that nature. And they even had, in the weeks and months leading up to the assassination, credible reports that the guy was looking at committing this kind of an act of violence. So at the very least, what we have is a very incompetent investigation.
Thomas Matthew Crooks, that's his name. So they had evidence apparently, or there is evidence to say that so Matthew Crooks is the guy that had a go at Trump in Pennsylvania. They had evidence, intelligence services had evidence about him as well. So I think the narrative that is coming out a lot from what I have seen, CIA conspiracy, is that the conversation, the way that I've seen the conversation forming around this so far is the CIA, it is not a conspiracy. Nothing really says that, but everything that's being declassified makes the CIA look like shit, basically. And the CIA, looking like shit, I am going to be making the case later, is perfect for the MAGA movement at the moment for obvious reasons. Their war against the deep state and all of that sort of stuff. But this is the conversation that's coming out. Nothing conclusive, nothing that confirms or denies conspiracy theories, just an incompetent intelligence service. This is the conversation that you'll be seeing more and more, I think, over the next few weeks or months. Whenever people uncover something interesting and the mainstream media picks it up, it's going to be a lot of this. They could have done more. What were they doing?
That should have had tabs on this guy and should have probably prevented it from happening. Now, you could make the case based on that maybe the CIA didn't want to stop it from happening, or maybe the people that were involved, because we don't know how many people knew about these reports. Like, let me show you what I mean. Okay, so here's one of the documents a lot of people are talking about right now, and this is a couple of things I want to point out about this. This document is a retyped letter from handwritten, so we don't have the original handwritten document, and it is dated from the 1970s, specifically March 15th, 1978. And it says at the bottom, Select Committee on Assassinations told me to write the letter to the embassy in early 1977. So what we have here is a person reporting in the late 1970s about events that they say happened in the months leading up to Kennedy's assassination. So what we don't have here are documents from August of 1963.
I was just testing the algorithm censorship. This historian is a bit of a reactionary in some of the other videos I've seen him in. Ah, okay, interesting. Well, it would help the reactionary tale, to be honest, which seems to be like around like attacking the government sector at the moment, especially attacking the deep state for their own ends. So if he's got a reactionary view of history, and like, yeah, he seems to be dismissive of anything that doesn't point to a weak intelligence service.
Claiming these things. We have documents from 15 years after the assassination talking about events they say happened before the assassination. So keep that.
Isn't it funny how you can say CIA conspiracy though, but you can't say Marxist dad, your own name on YouTube. You can't say that, but you can say CIA conspiracy. That's pretty funny. Where's the filter? Where's it at?
Mind, I'm not saying that makes it untrue. I'm just saying context. And what he says here is that a consul of the Soviet embassy gave this information to him, and it's a letter written to the Russian ambassador, and it's signed by this guy Sergei Sornino, who has a U.S. passport. And he says, Mr. Vasilev Consul gave me order to transmit this information to the U.S. government on August 9th, 1963, in Sofia, Bulgaria. These are kind of the channels through which things are being communicated. And he says that Mr. Lee Harvey Oswald on August 14, 1963, this information was given. He will kill President Kennedy. He's an assassin. On August 15, 1963, in Sofia, Bulgaria, at the airport in an embassy car, I told to Mr. Blackshear, American Vice Consul, that Mr. Lee Harvey Oswald is an assassin. Remember, Oswald spent some time in the Soviet Union, tried to defect to the Soviet Union, was a known communist sympathizer, passed out flyers and things like that in the United States about communism. Mr. Blackshear said, it seems like he will kill someone. I said that Mr. Lee H. Oswald is preparing to kill President of the United States, John F. Kennedy.
How's this language that's used in this? I don't know if you guys can see that, so I'm going to read it out. Logging through history, I'm a bit of a fan of him. He claims to be a conservative, though in his political compass test, he's ranked in the lib left. Interesting. Coincidence? I think not. But I couldn't call them shady. Yeah, you can't call them shady, but you can name them outright, and that'll get through the censor. Yeah, the language in this is crazy. Like I said, Mr. Lee H. Oswald will be killed after kill Kennedy. Like the language is not great. I said I will take the truth drug to tell the truth. Director, tell us who else get killed in this country. I said as I heard that Mr. Martin Luther King Jr. will be killed. Who will kill Dr. King Jr. Negro leader? I said a man who is in prison at this time. Now, the language in this is incredible. So this guy was willing to take the truth pill, the truth drug, to tell the truth. But like apparently this came out like what? 15 years after the assassination, this letter.
Kennedy. Mr. Blackshear said, where will it happen? I said they, the right wing, will invite President, criticize him in the newspaper, then kill him. Mr. Blackshear told me he will give the telegram to Department of State, and he gave me the address where to report. And then it goes on to say, he says, I said Mr. Lee H. Oswald will be killed after kill Kennedy. Doctor, tell us who else get killed in this country. I said, as I heard, that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. will be killed. Who will kill Dr. King Jr., Negro leader? I said, a man who was in prison at this time. James Earl Ray was in prison at this time. So to me, looking at this, it's all really suspect. We have a guy in the late 1970s saying that he had a conversation back in August of 1963 saying that
LSD. Hey, it's one hell of a drug. It's really disjointed. Could have been shorthand, I guess. Yeah. Yeah. Or like if this guy's Russian, maybe his English isn't that great. Yeah, the investigation was halted that late. Yeah. But like this is incredible. Like, and then these are the types of files they have. Oh, like this is one of the ones that they pulled out and people are speculating over. I guess everything else is just like very boring bureaucratic stuff.
That Lee Harvey Oswald was going to kill John F. Kennedy, and that also James Earl Ray was going to kill Martin Luther King, which happened 5 years later. Again, if we had these documents that we could prove that they came from August of 1963, then we would have something. But what we have is somebody reporting about it 15 years later. Kind of like how we have friends saying they heard a guy say something 6 months before he took his own life, or maybe didn't take his own life. All of these documents are saying to me is that people are making claims after the fact. I don't know. I just don't see anything here right now. Before we look at any of the other documents, a couple just real quick things I want to highlight. There are a lot of other things that are being shared on social media, and I want to caution everybody. When somebody shares something on social media and claims it to be true, look at who that person is who's sharing it, and look to there has no. It came from people on social media because says stuff like that. We need to have today. It could offer seem to said it, but everybody else have a healthy degree of skepticism unless you go doing images. JFK Jr. shortly before he died in a plane crash called Joe Biden a traitor, and was then being a traitor had nothing to do with the guy who this. Another one is all these people that are posting images from the trying to make claims that just assassination of John F. Kennedy nothing to do with JFK necessarily, but it
all right, here we go.
Even implies that Israel had anything to do with the assassination of John F. Kennedy. All right, let's take a look at a couple more. So this one was kind of interesting and not directly related to anything to do with JFK necessarily, but it's from 1958, and it was released as part of these records because it relates to the CIA surveillance of people connected to the Soviet Union, which included Lee Harvey Oswald. And it talks about how they had something like 300 people working for the CIA just opening people's mail that was going to the Soviet Union so that they could look for any secrets that were going on.
So, like, can you Americans tell me, like, is your government allowed to go through your mail and stuff like that? Like, I'm pretty sure, like, with my understanding of how your constitution works and all that sort of stuff, like, the government isn't supposed to be prying in on people's mail, like, even for intelligence service purposes. And they've got like teams of people that go through the mail of, like, I guess people on a watch list or something like that, unless there is like some type of like legislation that's set up to kind of, I don't know, catch commies or something like that, or spies and espionage, blah 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 blah. They're not supposed to be able to go through personal property without a permit. Okay, yeah, I thought that might be the case. The irresponsibility of its own people. Kissinger, RE, people of Chile, and what CIA and others he sent to fix the problem. Now, Kissinger, what a fucking character as well. My God.
Like that. And this actually, why this is relevant to me is that one of the things it tells me is that they had their eyes on a lot of people and a lot of situations. And it says here that they indexed 250,000 names related to this investigation. So in hindsight then, if one of those 250,000 names was Lee Harvey Oswald, I can understand why the CIA maybe had bits and pieces of information about Oswald being a problem, but didn't pursue it with a whole bunch of man hours. But then after Oswald assassinated the president, they realized, oh my gosh, we did have some documents on this guy. And I think based on what we've seen, there's something like 30 to 40 documents that the CIA had related to Oswald. Well, they might have had thousands of documents related to other people who didn't end up shooting the president. So as I'm trying to process all of this in my mind, what I'm seeing is that afterwards, the CIA in retrospect said, you know what, we had some information here and maybe we should have run this down. But there might not have been necessarily any reason for them to do that because they had only a certain amount of resources and man hours they could put into this. And there may have been other people who seemed like more threatening targets, and it was only after the assassination that they realized, oh, we had some stuff on this guy. Kind of makes us look bad that we didn't follow up on it. So maybe we should just kind of brush this under the rug. And a similar thing happened with the FBI, because the FBI had actually had Oswald in for questioning at one point, and again, it made him look bad. And so here is the point I'm getting at with all of this. And obviously a lot can change as more and more of this stuff comes out. Here are my main points. Number one, don't believe everything you see. Look at the sources for yourself, read them for yourself, and don't just take people's word for what it says.
They go through the mail. The Patriot Act permits broad surveillance. The first part of the Kissinger quote was censored. Interesting. Far out. They seem to be not liking you today, Marxist Dad, and Jag. But like Jag has gotten a few comments through recently. It's just you, Marxist Dad, at the moment. It's probably your name, to be honest. You're on a watch list. They've been going through your mail. Hope you don't use the mail service anymore because they're watching you.
Because everybody's going to view this, myself included, through our own biases. So read the documents for yourself, use your critical thinking skills, and draw your own conclusions based on...
I think that's actually a pretty good point. Like, you can go on the National Archive and like check it out for yourself. Like, if you really are interested in this, like, you could probably go through it yourself. Like, what do they say here? 30,000, 32,000, 31,000. Like, there's 219 pages of information archived here that's available for you to download and like check out for yourself. So like, you really could go through this information and just read the document for yourself. Like, I guess, and the credible ones will do kind of what he's doing and put the screenshot of what they're talking about, like, while they're talking about it. So at least you can read along with it and make your own opinions and not just be blindly told what they say. So like, he's right. Like, if you really want to figure this out for yourself, like, you can read it. But like, far out, 60,000 pages. Good luck. Search the U.S. Patriot Act. All right, why not? (2001), the U.S. Patriot Act was a landmark act of the United States Congress signed into law by President George W. Bush. No way. In response to September 11. Yeah, I think I've heard Chris Hedges talk about the Patriot Act then. That significantly expanded the search and surveillance powers of federal law enforcement and intelligence agencies. The USA Patriot Act, as amended, reauthorized from 2003, made numerous changes to existing statutes relating to privacy of telephone and electronic communications operations. And you know what's interesting? Because we've been talking about techno-feudalism recently, right? And like, we've been speaking about surveillance capitalism. And surveillance capitalism does speak a bit about like this type of stuff, the impact that George Bush had in terms of surveillance and stuff, and like how terrorism helped open the door, and like what opened the door to the techno-feudalists and the surveillance capitalists was this type of counter-terrorist like legislation and changes to surveillance attitudes within American culture. And so the surveillance state kind of opened up, and like, so did the door for the old surveillance capitalist class, or the techno-feudalists, because they, at the birth of kind of, it's not the birth, but like, this was really the onset of the digital age in terms of the explosion of the World Wide Web, and like, they flourished under the extensive powers given to them by changes to attitudes towards surveillance. And so like, they were able to collect data on people and all this sort of stuff, and they were more than happy to do and develop their infrastructure lock in step with the surveillance state itself. So like, agencies like the CIA and things like that, because they were developing the digital infrastructure and the programs and all that sort of stuff. And like, this was being picked up by surveillance capitalists and then used in Silicon Valley. And like, they were making an absolute mint of all of this stuff that was now coming out from the surveillance age, I guess you will call it. So like, this Patriot Act here goes hand in hand with the rise of techno-feudalism and surveillance capitalists and stuff like that. So very, very interesting. So you're right when you say this changed everything, Jag. It really did. And the USA Freedom Act 2015. I don't know the USA Freedom Act. Let's have a look at that one. You guys really set the tone for the rest of the world, though. You bloody Americans. Here we go. USA Freedom. Hey, look at this. Can you see what that says? Assist. That was an auto-generated response by Google's AI. And like, it tells you, kind of gives you a quick response. So it's basically like ChatGPT is built into Google now. USA Freedom Act 2015 is a USA law that reformed several provisions of the Patriot Act, particularly limiting bulk collection of telecommunications metadata by intelligence agencies and restoring certain surveillance authorities. It was enacted on June 2nd, 2015 to enhance privacy protections while still allowing the government to gather necessary intelligence for national security. Interesting. Strengthening America by fulfilling rights. Yeah, there we go. Why not? You can do both of those things, right? You can do both of those things. They can happen. They're not mutually exclusive, are they? No.
On everything that we know. Any one document, this is called proof texting. And what proof texting is where you start with an argument you want to make, and then you look for documentation that proves your argument. And so, for example, if I start with the view that the CIA had John F. Kennedy killed, then I'm going to see those couple of documents related to Underhill and say, aha, there's the smoking gun, this proves it. And I've seen a lot of people say that. Whereas I, coming from the standpoint that I think that Oswald acted alone and that the CIA screwed up but didn't order the hit by Oswald, I look at that same document and I say, you know what, that doesn't really tell me anything that makes me change my mind about this. It just sounds to me like some friends said that the guy said this, and then 6 months later he ended up dead, maybe or maybe not because of suicide, maybe or maybe not related to any of this stuff. It doesn't change based on everything I've looked at, my view on that. So that's one thing. Number two, in addition to having a healthy skepticism and asking yourself, where are these sources coming from and what is their agenda, myself included, again, so as you're watching this video, I've been very upfront about what my views are on all of this and how this doesn't change that. But you need to decide that for yourself. Number two, in all of this, I think that the government did not do itself any favors as related to the skepticism people have over their involvement by covering so much of this stuff up. I think it's a very fair question for people to ask. Why did they keep this stuff out of our hands for so long? Why did they not want us to see it? And again, for those who feel the government was involved, that's evidence that they were involved. They're
self-inflicted wound. That's used for every planning to expose Boeing. That's used for every planning to expose Boeing. So I'm not sure what you mean. For everyone that's going to be planning to expose Boeing. Yeah. And like, there's American corporate history is riddled with like people inflicting self-injuries when trying to expose like corporate corruption and corporate dirty tactics and stuff like that. Like, especially in the medical and pharmaceutical industries. Oh my God. Wow. A lot of doctors that go missing. For every guy planning to do that. Yeah.
Desire to cover it up. And those of us who don't think the government was involved in the assassination would look at that and say, you know what? I think the government was covering up a high degree of incompetence on their part. And any documents they destroyed or hid
Fancy
or redacted
language, yeah.
makes them look.
Yeah, he's got a point. Like covering this stuff up for so long and all that sort of stuff. It doesn't look good. Like, it doesn't help. Like, especially for conspiracy theories and all that sort of stuff. Like, you have to really ask the question why it was done for so long. If it was really to cover up incompetence, as the narrative is now unfolding, as we will see across the media landscape, is just covering up incompetence. This is going to suit very well, I think, only like a very, very particular agenda indeed. So, in saying that, let us go and have a look at that very particular agenda indeed. And like, I really am quite shameful of having to do this because I think this guy is an absolute, I don't even know how to say it properly. I think he's absolutely a shameful human being. This guy, I hate his content style, and I think he does nothing but like divide people and cause animosity. But like, this is a gentleman by the name of Benny Johnson. And so like, he's a right-wing pundit as bad as you get him. Up there with the despicables like Shapiro and Kirk and such. But like, he seems to be particularly sinister. But like, oh God, not that guy. Well, look, yes, that guy. And so like, we're going to have a look at what he is saying about this exact same bunch of documents to get an understanding of, Benny Johnson. He builds his whole career around kissing up to Trump. Yes. Which is good because this is going to give us a good understanding of what the hell is going on over there. We're not going to spend long on this, but like, we're going to see very, very quickly why Trump and the MAGA crowd are so interested in this. And it's got nothing to do with relieving the sorrows of the Kennedy family, let's be honest. Kissinger famously rationalized toppling the elected socialist Chilean government by saying, I don't see why we need to stand by and watch a country go commit due to the irresponsibility of its own people. Yeah, that was Kissinger and the realpolitik in action right there. Always the pragmatist and really just wanting to help out people that can't help themselves, really. Using the CIA, extending this kind of thinking to US progressive presidents and solving a similar problem. So yeah, let's listen to old Benny. Like I said, it's not a high point in my streaming career, but like incredibly telling. This is going to be incredibly telling about why we should be kind of concerned about what's going to come out of this conversation, I think, about the JFK files. So let's have a listen. And like, I won't put you through too much of this pain, just enough to get an understanding of what's going through their heads. Okay.
And it's crazy. So let's just start with this. Now, I believe that there are dozens of other documents that, when put together in a mosaic, prove that the CIA, at the very least, had foreknowledge of the Kennedy assassination and allowed it to happen. That federal law enforcement, at the very least, understood what was about to happen and perhaps precipitated the events. What does that remind you of? Oh yeah, Ryan Ruth, who was already on the FBI's wanted list, who was not allowed to own a firearm, who was already subjected to multiple federal investigations, just being allowed to literally waltz up to Donald Trump within 200 yards of him with the gun. They allowed it to happen. Same thing with Matthew Thomas Crooks. They allowed it to happen. You go through the actual details of the event, and what you see is that you have perhaps not a guy, like, it's not like Matthew Thomas Crooks had a badge with Homeland Security or a CIA badge or an FBI badge, but he was someone who was allowed to get so close to Trump with a gun that you knew something bad was going to happen. And the big question there is, who allowed it to happen? Who created the circumstances where President Trump was being protected by the C&D team? He didn't even have Secret Service the day that he was shot in the head. Who created those circumstances? Who broke it down to the point where the systems failed so badly that Trump took a bullet, ate a bullet?
He ate a bullet. Remember that, ladies and gentlemen? He ate a bullet for America. Just got back in, and you actually used Benny Johnson. I did. And like, I'm painting a picture here, Jerry, so just give me a chance. I am trying to prove a point here. That guy was also one of the reactionary Republican influencers exposed as working for Russia. He ate a knee. That's what he ate. No, he ate a bullet. Okay, Jag. All right. Apparently he ate it. He ate it. He didn't skim his face. He ate a bullet for the nation.
People died. And when you look through the JFK assassination, it's the same thing. The sequence of events.
Same
We're going to get to you all the documents here. All right.
It's the same thing. JFK getting his head blown off is the same thing as Donald Trump getting shot and a bullet skimming past his face.
Right? But this is just one. Pop the document up one more time. Gary Underhill, CIA agent, saying the CIA was hunting him and was about to take his life. And sure enough, the man died.
Sure enough, goddammit.
Underhill was found shot to death in his Washington apartment. The coroner ruled it a suicide. 12 gunshot wounds to the back of the head. A suicide, you see. Got it? Sounds like the man who knew a little too much.
So this is it. He ate it. He ate it, apparently. Oh, wait. He had sandwich, butter, cheese, lettuce, and a bullet. And he ate it. He ate it well. Because that's what Trump does. But like, here we are. Okay. This is the conversation that is coming from the MAGA crowd. Is that like, what we're going to have here is an understanding that Trump is analogous to JFK, someone that literally paid the ultimate sacrifice in, I guess you would say, the service of their country. They were a public figure, they were the head of state, and they were out, doing the old pleasantries, and they got taken out. And Trump was on rally, and like, he was not taken seriously by the Democrats at the time. They wouldn't give him proper Secret Service agents. He had like what did he say, the C and D class protection going on. He was shot at by Thomas Matthew Crooks. Act of God, so divine intervention happened, and the bullet strayed from the target. Like I said, act of God saved Trump, and Trump is now a national hero who has literally taken a bullet for the country. So this is the story that is going to be coming out of these files. I thought it really, really was about like, okay, we can jump on this now because obviously they're attacking through Doge, the government sector generally. And like they want to, drain the swamp as they were going to do last time. And like, they can get rid of the deep state. And so I thought that this was generally going to be a way to kind of uncover all of these files and just talk about how the CIA is generally incompetent. And like that seems to be a theme that is, like I've said, is going to be picked up by the mainstream media. It's been picked up by certain commentators on like, in different fields. It's just like, the CIA really doesn't look good here. Kind of thing. And so like we have the Doge operation going on at the moment. We have Trump and the boys like, basically attacking the state structure itself, the bureaucracy to the core. You have like Trump kind of, or Tulsi Gabbard going through and like, systematically like basically gutting out the intelligence service and putting in people that are appropriate to, I guess, the loyalties of the MAGA movement and Trump's campaign. And like this is full on justification now for all of that. Like you can see that like by releasing this stuff, who is like, it's kind of like a non-partisan act, like kind of thing. Just being like, hey, Kennedy's blah, 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 they're Democrats. Like, here I am, Republican figure, like releasing this stuff as an act of goodwill, really. And it's just like, and don't the CIA just look horrible? Like, look at our intelligence services. Like, we're not talking about like now, but we're talking like back in the 60s, they were like this too, just like all over the place. They could have done something about this. Like this guy's bringing up, stuff about like people that have like, according to the coroner, have been kind of, they've committed suicide, but they've also been, shot 12 times in the back of the head and stuff like that, like, which is an incredible feat for someone like that to shoot themselves in the back of the head, 12 times or something. And so like they're really painting the picture of the incompetence of intelligence services, but like, the state and government like more broadly. But I thought that was it. I really thought that was the extent of what was going to be going on here. Like they're just graciously pointing out like how bad the intelligence services are, but like it's more than that. Okay, the picture that is kind of being painted to the ye old faithful here is that like Trump is being treated in the same way as JFK was. They failed him. The intelligence services failed them both on purpose. It was part of kind of their broader plan. And like, as a result of that, they're both up on the same field, like both national treasures, both national heroes. And like this solidifies and cements his place as kind of a selfless hero figure that would give their life for the nation kind of thing, and will be the savior of American culture. And I don't want to say democracy, because like I don't think that's really what they're even going for. I don't think they really care too much about saving democracy, but like, he's going to be the savior of kind of the American way of life. And so like this goes beyond just like an exercise in demonstrating how the deep state is ineffectual anymore. This is about potentially building up someone into an absolute messiah and savior figure, which ties into other issues about like potentially what is going on with Trump's ultimate playbook here. Because like I've been listening to people discuss, they have been doing that for years now. They have, but like this is like this goes beyond just their general kind of narrative. Like this is drawing correlations between, like what we were talking about before, like something that is ingrained in American mythology, and like the national story almost. And if you can draw, this is what, I really don't like using this analogy unless it really, really works. But like, I think it does in this case. And like, this is part of the fascist playbook. Okay. What you do is you draw upon the national mythology in order to strengthen your position in the eyes of the population. Now, like this was much easier for like the Germans to do because they had a national mythology, because like Europeans have mythologies and stuff like that that really do go back like, you know, a long time kind of thing, as a nation, as a people, as like, you know, going back to Germanic tribes and all that sort of stuff. And so there was like pagan elements for like the Nazis to draw upon and all that sort of stuff. And like the same with the Italians, like when Mussolini was looking at doing stuff with his National Socialist Party, his own you know, fascistic party, he was able to draw upon the imperial power of like kind of the Roman mythology and the Roman ethos to paint the picture of like the chosen people and like himself as like kind of this strong leader type kind of thing. Now, like America doesn't have the breadth of history that like, you know, the European nations have, and they can anchor themselves into kind of antiquity, or like an ancient civilization that like, you know, is worth kind of invigorating to bring about like the national spirit and coalesce people around. But like this story, like RFK, like it captured the nation. Like you were saying, like, you know, before that, like, you know, grandparents tell their children this story, and like, you know, it's ingrained in like in the fabric of the political history. And so like this is adopting a national mythology and like placing it upon like crowning it upon a new figure and saying like, can't you see the correlation here? This is part of like the American story, the part of the American mythology, and like this gives more ground than like anything that is kind of speculative and like religious based. It gives more ground to that because like more people can attach themselves to that type of mythology. The Germans manufactured a boatload of mythology and previous historical evidence to paint their picture. They had a big geology division that pulled all sorts of solidifying artifacts out of the ground. That's interesting. There you go. I don't know if MAGA really needed this as their cherry on top. No, I don't think so, but like it does allow a broader section of the population to be brought in on the story. That's the point that I'm trying to make. I don't think the MAGA types need it particularly, but like the broader population, if you can successfully convince other people that are sitting on the fence or a bit speculative that like really they're the same type of they're exactly the same story. They were both screwed over by the CIA. They both had the same sort of stuff happen to them, and like that's a big part of American mythology, and you can draw a correlation to that. Then like you can draw in more people that might be, like I said, sitting on the fence. So like I don't know if this is something that will put a extra, you know, fire into the hearts of like hardcore MAGA supporters, but like anyone that's like, you know, umming and ahhing about this stuff and the validity of Donald Trump kind of thing, that this will be one of the things that at least sows some doubt in whether they should, you know, be skeptical of him or not, or maybe they should believe in his cause. And like this will be part of, I think, the story that goes around, if there are any attempts, like time will tell, if there are any attempts, which like a lot of people, like liberals, I guess, and like people that are concerned about democracy are going down like kind of this like projecting into the future and trying to say, oh, you know, there's going to be attempts made to extend the presidency or something like that, or use special powers. This will be part of the story that helps extend and keep him in power if it ever comes to that. The CIA has never exactly had a good reputation. Yes, I agree. But like being able to draw correlations between figures definitely helps as part of that story. So in saying that, let me move over now to a very particular and interesting discussion that I heard just the other day about like this type of stuff. And it's got to do with religion and populism. And I want to take us over to this chat because I think it's actually quite important. It's quite interesting. It's quite interesting because I'm all for populism. I actually think that in a bourgeois society, the only thing that can really topple a bourgeois political structure is populist movements, because populism is the political expression of the people. And like the broad masses of people, while they have been politically active in the past, like movements of people, broad popular movements have helped shape history politically. They have never been actually involved in the political process formally. And so this is a very interesting point in time, because like now in liberal democracies anyway, the broad masses of populations are actually allowed to be involved politically. And so populist elections are an interesting factor of the modern age. And so like I would like to examine populism in the context of religion specifically, because I think that is a very particular branch of populism that will take us down a very scary path under a capitalist mode of production. So CIA has never had exactly a good reputation, a lot of which was counterfeit. JD Vance is being groomed, but he is a long way off being respected by the masses. Yeah, I guess he is being groomed. I've thought about that to myself. Like, what do they want with JD Vance at the end of the day? Maybe if, something happens to Donald Trump, like because of his age-related stuff, they have him in there. But he's definitely, he's being shaped and groomed. Royalty have often demanded to be seen as gods, using national mythology to their advantage. Yeah, and I think, this is part of that playbook. In my opinion, my US home will not vote for president again this decade. Oh, that's a big call. And this is like kind of what I am speaking about at the moment, because like I've heard some people that I kind of respect talking about this type of stuff, and they are worried about like, if there'll be some type of emergency or some type of, I don't know, some type of system put in place, some type of policy decision, some type of emergency situation that will allow additional powers. And like, I think it's a lot of speculation at the moment, but like something like this, Bannon is already talking about it. Yeah. And like this is why I'm talking about this, because like, I know like there's a lot of stuff going on here. It's like, oh, we've been here before. People don't respect this. They don't respect that. But like this douchebag, like he is the epitome of the mouthpiece of like, the other ones seem to have a little bit more self-respect, but like this guy has zero self-respect from what I've seen of his. And so like, if this is the narrative that like they are the same stories really, and like this one, like Trump was lucky to survive, and like we know what they're about, and like we just can't trust the government at all. Like, why stop with like a 4-year term? Let's finish off the job and save America kind of thing. And let's go now to what savior figures look like in a religious populist setting. So let's have a listen, shall we? And you stop me in the comments and you tell me why you think that like this guy is wrong, or the sentiment doesn't have legs about like, Trump being a savior figure, kind of based on a comparison to JFK and all that sort of stuff. So let's see what this gentleman has to say.
The authority that's established and is individual democratic. It only recognizes that I, as an individual, have to respect what is the consensus out there, the authority that's established and represented by whatever the governance mechanism is. Authority and loyalty is kind of a line. Ask not what my country can do for me, but ask what I can do for my country. Isn't that amazing? How many years ago was that? A line that had great meaning, great power. I'm a citizen. I'm engaged. I am going to accept my role and obligation as a citizen to behave in a certain way, as opposed to saying, wait, it's all about me and what my particular interests are. The issue of purity is one that grabs me because if I'm looking at religion, religion deals a lot with purity. Now, I know that for many of us, we're saying, well, if purity is so important for the religious nationalists, why would they support a man like Donald Trump? Purity, right? It's a good question. Well, let me tell you. One is I'm not sure I know. But I will tell you what I heard. What I heard was King David. What do we know about King David? He was arrogant. What else? A poet. Lovely. What else? Father of Solomon. Good. You're all missing some of the core stuff. He was an adulterer. He was a rapist. He was a murderer because he murdered her husband to justify her pregnancy, right? And his descent, David's descent, he comes from forbidden marriages on every side. And through King David will come the Messiah, right? Through King David will come the Messiah. God works in mysterious ways, right? Even the impure can be the source of messianic redemption. And it's a little bit of language we've heard, haven't we, about messianic redemption, God's intervention to save his life. Well, that's not just here. That is all around it. It's in Israel. It's in India. It's in Indonesia, right? So purity becomes very important. Fairness is viewed in different ways. Fairness can be leveling the playing field, but fairness can also be you get what you deserve. And the issue of compassion is much more on the liberal side. They're the ones who are concerned about compassion much more than authority, loyalty, and purity. But you see it in the Catholic Church today. The United States Conference of Bishops is very adamant.
Isn't basically a discussion that religion is used as justification. Oh, you know, I did X, but God is on my side. Yeah, and that's like usually a national tale, especially told during times of war. But like this is specifically how religion is used in populism and like populist nationalist movements and stuff like that. And so like he goes through and like lists like different ways that like religious populists kind of pick up on like the religious zeal and enthusiasm of sections of the population. And like America has a deeply Christian part of their national mythology, and like it was like Christian colonists that came over and kind of basically wanted to right the wrongs of the European continent and, you know, bring over and create a society that was really worth living, like beyond the reach of kind of, you know, kings and like, you know, the evil Catholic Church and all that sort of stuff. And so like in order to kind of set up that society, they made kind of a pact with God. And like they were going to set up a society that like, you know, where citizens participated, there was a level of authority in the society as well. And they had like, that was all built on like good Christian values. And so this religious populism kind of like, or people that are populists that like appeal to kind of people's religious religious characteristics, their traits, their cultural backgrounds and stuff like that, have like, you know, hidden powers because of the power that comes kind of with religious stories. And they're able to invoke like elements within religious stories and like caricatures in religious stories, and take upon those roles upon themselves. And so he's used an example of David, who was like kind of is the authoritative figure, so the state figure that was going to be obviously instrumental in the birth of the Messiah and the coming of the Messiah to the human world, like basically great, God gracing the land or the human race with a son in the flesh, and King David was going to be instrumental in that. And King David wasn't particularly pure at all. He was quite a nefarious figure by kind of Christian value standards, but unlike Trump is similar to that. And so like you can kind of superimpose religious mythology on populist leaders, and like they can do basically really anything as long as they they appear to be kind of enforcing reinforcing certain values within kind of your religious framework. And that's like Trump definitely doubles down on that type of good old strong kind of white Christian values about like sex and like marital status, and like who that really applies to, like genders and like traditional values and like child rearing and all that type of stuff. And so like this guy speaks very interestingly, I think, about like how religious populism is on the rise, or like speaks very, very importantly in societies where that is still very, very strong in the culture, basically. And he uses examples like India as well. Like they have a strong movement there, and their nationalism in India is based on their religious zeal as well. Like the main religion there justifies a population and a culture and a political structure built around religious authority as well. I grew up in the Bible Belt, different breed. The US petty bourgeois also hates tyrants. I'm one of those old school US Puritans and have family in the US. Back to 1635, no way. And they didn't want to pay extraordinary taxes due to their faith. Yes, the Puritans were very much like that. An underhanded way of doing the same thing. My family left England in 1635 to avoid the fines and extra taxes they were getting hit with by King Charles, Church of England. Wow. My dad would always say, no one more righteous than a reformed whore. And now you're a Marxist. Yeah, that's what I was thinking when I was reading that. Like, what a journey from 1635 to being Marxist dad. What a journey your family has been on. My God.
About the issues of loyalty, purity, authority, abortion, homosexuality. Those are areas we must stand against them. The Pope overwhelmingly has said, no, it's about compassion. It's about compassion, not about power, not even about purity. So we see divisions even within religious settings and religious institutions. But I want to focus on this issue of purity because this becomes very important.
I think that's a really interesting issue as well. Like for religious types, especially like Christian religious types in America, like compassion is a liberal value, not a conservative value, like based on his research. That's incredible. Like if you actually read like parts of the Bible where like Jesus is talking about stuff, like it's all about being compassionate. And it's like none of the other like, virtuous kind of stuff that like, seems nice in practice. Sorry, seems nice in theory, but like how do you put it into practice? And so like he was heavy on being compassionate, but like compassionate is like just some airy-fairy liberal ideal. Whereas like, being pure, having some good old authority and stuff like that. Now that's a real religious kind of value that you can hang your hat on. None of that, compassion stuff. Screw that. Yeah. Christian nationalists often ignore parts of the book that don't match their value. Like the whole book. LOL. Like, yeah, pretty much. And this is what I'm saying, like about compassion and stuff. Compassion is a liberal value. Jesus wouldn't have said anything about that. Jesus taught forgiveness and passion and generosity, but the Christian nationalists reject that. Yeah, they do for in the name of purity and authority, because that'll uphold the right value system.
This is actually my father-in-law. He was a great Bible scholar. And he posed the question in the Bible, if you get rid of demons, if you get rid of other gods, then where does evil reside? Evil can only reside in human beings. And that becomes very important for the American story. Very, very important for the American story. The founding of this country, of the United States, is founded on a covenant. Well, you heard that from the Pilgrims. You heard that actually on the ship coming over with the first Pilgrims that are going to settle in Massachusetts. We are in a covenant with God. That's why when you travel through the Northeast, there's one biblical city after another. It's the story of a renewed Israel. The United States forms, or the colonies then formed as a renewed Israel. And a renewed Israel that's in covenant with God. But if you're in covenant with God, God will defend.
God is my CEO. That is a good one.
You. God will protect you. You'll even have a Jewish guy write "God Bless America" in a song that all of us learned to sing. But there's also human obligation as well. There's the obligation of citizens. And if we sin, if we allow for sin, if we sin, God can evaporate. God can abandon God's holy land. So that this is not simply about my view and your view, and we can have a conversation. Because to fail to be covenantal, to fail to hold on to God's promise to defend an America that is blessed by God because of its holiness.
I think this is a really interesting point. And the Americans in here, please correct me if I'm wrong, but the ideal of American exceptionalism, especially for the Christian base, which is a huge part of the American culture, and very active in American politics, their exceptionalism is based on the idea that God is supportive of them and their American way and their American cause and all that sort of stuff. And so to give up, to concede to these kind of disturbing liberal notions that undermine and attack these core values of purity and authority that give us important values about how to live traditional lives and the roles of men and women and children and your place in society and in citizenry. If you allow the liberal takeover, or if you allow somebody else to come in and undermine that structure and basically, that set of core ideals, if you allow someone to do that, then you are effectively damning the whole country. And then it is your object. It is your mission as a good Christian and a good person generally to want to save the nation from these people. And so it doesn't matter who that figure is. It can be the sleaziest 80s guy ever. Basically, dripping in filth. But if he's going to be the one that delivers us from evil, then so be it. Because by doing so, by delivering us from evil, he will save the nation, he will save America, and therefore everyone will be able to continue their happy existences. So this is a massive form of national mythology that is very, very hard to displace or do battle against, and a massive voter bloc, so massive political force in the country. And if you look at fascism based on national mythologies and things like that, this is a real mythology to be reckoned with. And so the more you have, I know this might sound like my conspiracy theory and stuff like that, but the more you have stories hey, JFK, big part of the American mythology, very secular story, really got nothing to do with religious symbolism or mythology at all. But if you can draw that into the conversation, which is already backed by strong religious mythology already, and like the like derivative of the founding of the nation itself, that religious story, like tying in all of these elements to one figure, and like you will have a large section of the population that is more than happy to follow that savior figure. It could be anyone, but like at the moment it's in the form of the Orange Man, but like they're more than willing to follow that savior figure in any decision that they make, as long as they maintain those Christian values, because that is what will save America at the end of the day. That is a huge thing to factor. This goes well beyond politics when it comes to talking about like populism and the masses and stuff like that. This is people's actual like beliefs that are written into like their genetic code almost. Are you getting censored? That's hilarious. I'm going to read it out because they can't. Well, they can censor me, actually. They definitely can censor me. I've been censored before, but let's see if this gets through. In the lead up to the election, I noticed Republicans actually lead more with labeling the opposition as demons and evil, and avoided placing God on their own side. That's the underhanded but the same thing. A product of trying to lure those who don't like the mention of God into politics. Wow. Well, there you go. That's what Jerry Poppins got censored for. Interesting. I love this line though. God is my CEO, LOL. I pray to God and he rains down. He rains profits down on the believers. Oh, Lordy, Lordy. They also ignore the commandments that orders them to worship none other than God by favoring Trump. Down with prosperity gospel. Do they remember usury and exploitation as a sin? Like that's way too technical for it. 100% pretty much. Yellow, check your phone. I'm getting censored. It's our divine right. Exceptionalism goes back to the famous City in a Hill Puritan sermon in 1625 or whatever. By the name escapes me now. But there you go. So the exceptionalism is actually born about of religious zeal, or has significant ties to it. So I don't know how much power that still has over the younger generation. So interesting. But like, you know, culture does kind of, what's the word? Culture almost can take precedence over ideology in the sense that like it can be imprinted upon you subconsciously, and like, you know, through general interactions with your family and like, you know, your community and like all this type of stuff. So like even if you don't follow things by the letter of the law, you still have kind of these traits ingrained kind of in your personality almost. And so like, yeah, I would say the younger generations might not be as religious, and like that might be kind of a saving grace, but like these younger generations at the moment might not be a political force right now. But like certain people are a political force right now, and they seem to mobilize when necessary. You know what the irony is? This exceptionalism from an invisible hand stuff doesn't originate from Adam Smith. It originated from the Arab world in the Middle Ages. They hated taxes and governments. Yeah, they did. They just wanted free trade. And like their ideal society was just like, there was no state intervention in the economy. None at all. Look it up. Shining City on a Hill, Sermon of 1625 by someone in Massachusetts Bay Colony, I think. All right. But there were some differences in their markets. They deliberately had scholars and elders who would charge wealthy more so they could get a good deal for the poor. Had elements of baseline communism. FB will make you believe it. So anyway, I'll let this guy finish, but like this is the way that we're going with religious populism, because like a lot of people, I think, focus a lot on the populist side and the dangers of populism, but like there are various refractions of populism, and I think like, you know, Trump does have, like, even in people that would consider themselves almost like, you know, secular or agnostic or something like that, like this idea of like God being behind the nation and God like, and like Christian kind of virtue and stuff like that, like, you know, man, woman kind of thing. And like, there's not multiple genders and like, you know, family values and all that sort of stuff. While they might not be particularly religious and go to church on a Sunday, they would believe in these things culturally. And that comes from like a deeper Christian kind of story and part of that, like, yeah, national mythology and all that sort of stuff. And like, so, you know, certain politicians are really picking up on that. So like, you know, Modi in India and like, you know, Trump picking up on that stuff very well. In America. So like, you know, something to think about. And like, I know while it might be kind of a long bow to stretch, the JFK files kind of being used as like a way to kind of really solidify Trump in the American story. It's like, it definitely adds to that structure and adds to that pile. And like the more of these things that you have, like the more you can basically become more than just a politician, more than just a president kind of thing. You are the one that is going to deliver the country from evil and deliver us from evil.
If you do that, then God will leave. And if I'm a citizen of this country, if I'm a citizen of America and I participate in a society that sanctions, not only sanctions, but sanctifies marriage between a man and another man, or between a woman and another woman, that the government allows for the murder of a child who's in the womb, but taking a life, if it allows for the corruption of the core moral values that we...
And like the very particular language he used there, if I live in a country where a government, and so this is the big story at the moment, it's just like the government is number one public enemy. We got to unravel the deep state, like the intelligence services, like this, the whole system is decrepit. And like, look at the system. It's legalized this and it's legalized that. And it's like, you know, it can't even define what a man and a woman is. Like, this is outrageous. Like, you know, I can tell you what it is. Like, it's very, very, very apparent to me, like kind of thing. Why isn't it apparent to you? It's the government that is allowing all of this stuff to happen. We got to knock that system down at its core and, like, you know, basically purge it. We need to purge it and clean it out so it is purer once again.
Believe as faithful religious members, then I am also liable. It's my liability because I'm a citizen and I have allowed this to happen. And if that is the case, that I allowed this to happen, and this is now everywhere, right? It is in India where the primacy of Hinduism must be maintained for the sake not only of the people, but of what India is meant to be. And if the mayor of Jakarta, who's a Christian, says the wrong thing about Islam, he is going to go to jail for blasphemy. Or in Uganda, where Shira and I were in Uganda, which at the time was dealing more openly with homosexuality, and actually we met with sex workers who were being protected by the police there. And then the president of Uganda becomes a born-again Christian, and the next thing you know, the legislature is passing the death sentence for homosexuals. All of this is about protecting the sacredness of our nation. And if you don't do that, then you, as a sinner, will bring on its destruction. In the research that I did across the United States, we had a good research. You have a series of questions. I was interested in the connection between people's political views and their religious views. What influences what? Turned out the core question was this. You were asked, do you see the world as filled with evil and sinful forces, or is it a place of goodness and care? Those who valued purity and said the world is filled with sin and evil were almost entirely going to view on the social and political issues the most conservative possible populist decisions. Those who believed that the world is goodness and that compassion is their value overwhelmingly supported what we would say is the liberal views, right? So there I had what couldn't be, better evidence of a fundamental battle line, a true battle line of separation, which I think poses the problem of what does it mean to come together to talk? The last thing I want to give us is this wonderful James Cart's game theory model. Liberal democracy loves the game. You're playing canasta. You finish the game and somebody wins. What's the next thing you want to do? Play another game. And it's all right. I lost this one, but I'll win the next one. Because what is so important is the infinite game that we can play. That's democracy. That's liberal democracy. Religious-fueled democracy, populist democracy is something else. If the covenantal commitment is so crucial.
Sorry, his name was John Winthrop, a Puritan minister, delivered it on board the ship Arbella before they disembarked in 1635. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain literally commands not to use God as a reason for one's crimes. Yes, but like if we are learning anything today about this this religious populism, it is full of contradictions.
If sin is so pervasive and I need to stand against it, if I need to protect the core values that ensure God's promise to us, then I don't want an infinite game that plays again and again. I need a finite game. I need a game in which, mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. His truth goes marching on. That was a great religious voice for the Civil War. So I want to just pose, given this, I want to pose in the 30 seconds I'll take over my 20 minutes, I want to pose the following. For me, to believe that I own God's truth, that I know absolutely what God wants, is a form of heresy. That is a form of idolatry. What I believe religions can do is to recognize there's like this puzzle of God. And all these different religions have different pieces of the puzzle. And therefore we need each other to find the greater truths. And if we rip out and don't allow these to participate, these and these and these to participate, we will never, in fact, find the greater truth, whether you call it God or whether you call it anything else. And that type of diversity, that type of infinite democracy is absolutely crucial until the Messiah comes, however you believe the Messiah will come, then we don't have to worry about it. But until then, we need to work hard to recognize that diversity is in fact the divine plan. And it was all along. And that's what we need to be fighting for.
That is a very kind of hopeful takeaway from what he was just talking about then. But basically, I think what he is really saying is that like religion, so the religion of Christianity anyway, that like founded the Americas was not alive. Was not did not coexist with liberal democratic society. They were like being ruled by the king from afar, and like while they might have had a very autonomous and like free existence in the American colonies, their religious ideals and values dictated how society was run. And like the liberal democratic society that came over after from the American Revolution and onwards was not kind of exactly conducive to the Christian values that helped found the colonies and therefore the nation. And so like this endless game of like election after election after election cycle is not conducive to this Christian value, which is kind of, you know, trying to deliver God's work, and waiting for the day we can all ascend into heaven kind of thing. And so like you really need someone, like one leader or one group to take hold and like kind of cement those Christian values and hold them in place until the day of reckoning comes and we can all ascend into heaven, because like this back and forth has caused nothing but chaos and is tearing them further and further away from kind of these Christian values, I guess you would say, and therefore putting the entire nation at risk of like having God's protection. And so like, you know, liberal democracy is a problem. So this is the issue with religious populism, is that like it does paint a picture that like democracy is a problem. Now what he said, it was very happy and it was a nice hopeful way of ending, but he was just like, we need to be able to demonstrate to people that it's actually democratic diversity that like helps the nation run and helps everything be kind of strong and work for everyone. But like that is antithetical, I think, to basically all that he was saying just before that. And so like, you know, it's hard to build a case that you could just turn people around and convince them that, you know, diversity of opinion is going to be something important. So shining city on a hill. Let's see. I wonder if someone's reenacted it and it's on like YouTube or something like that. Let's have a look. Someone's delivered it already. We can. Wonder if they do it in here.
Without breath,
Oh my
I created you.
Boo. Oh, boo again. Double ads. Getting hammered today.
Historian, but neither are you. Welcome. It's gonna be, I'm hoping, have started school, hopefully for Columbus Bay Colony, and they would start the first Thanksgiving. But hopefully, amidst all the stories and all the lessons you guys are going to be learning about, at some point your teacher brings up the name John Winthrop and the boat called the Arabella without his help. Now to me, there are two ways that you can look at this speech. One, you can look at it as it's an incredibly uplifting pep talk.
Damn. I was hoping that someone would have recreated it. What did you say the person's name was? John Winthrop. Oh, here we go.
I'm Mark Vinette. John Winthrop delivered a sentence from England of the phrase, "a city on a hill," used to describe the expectation that the Massachusetts Bay Colony would shine like an example to the world. Let's listen to the most celebrated part of that famous speech with the help of the Revived Thoughts podcast.
We are to seek out a place of cohabitation and fellowship under a due form of government, both civil and ecclesiastical. There are two rules which we are to walk in together: justice and mercy. These are always separated in their actions and in their motivation, yet they may both agree in the same way at times. For sometimes there may be an opportunity of showing mercy to a rich man in some sudden danger or distress, and also of doing justice to a poor man in regard to some particular rule or law. There is a time when a Christian must sell all and give to the poor, as they did in the apostles' times. There is a time also when Christians, though they have not given all yet, must give beyond their ability. Likewise, in moments of crisis in the community, they may be called for extraordinary generosity. When there is no other way by which our Christian brother may be relieved in his distress, we must help him beyond our ability rather than tempt God by requiring him to intervene by miraculous or extraordinary means. This duty of mercy can be lived out in a few practices: giving, lending, and forgiving of debt. But there is a question. What rule should a man follow in giving respect to how much? The answer: if the time and days are ordinary, then he is to give out of his abundance. Let him lay aside just as God has blessed him. If the time and days are special, he must be ruled by them, knowing that a man
Sounds very communistic, all of this stuff, if you ask me. Just saying.
Cannot likely do too much if he puts himself and his family under a situation where they lack a comfortable subsistence. A man must lay up for his children and posterity. Fathers lay up for their future and their children, and he is worse than an infidel that doesn't provide for his own. In another place, the apostle speaks against those who walk in excess. And it is without question that he is worse than an infidel who, through his own laziness and pleasure-seeking, will neglect to provide for his family. He that gives to the poor lends to the Lord, and he will repay him even in his life 100-fold to him or his. The righteous is ever merciful and lends, and his seed enjoys the blessing. And besides, we know what advantage it will be to us in the day we must give account when many such witnesses will stand up for us to witness to the good use of our talents. And I know of those who fight against the idea of laying up for the time to come. If they do acknowledge it, how much do they let it affect them? Which brings us to this conclusion. If your brother is in need and you can help him, you do not need to doubt what you should do. If you love God, you must help him. All men are to be generous and cheerful while practicing and believing in sweeter promises. If you pour out your soul to the hungry, then will your light spring out in darkness, and the Lord will guide you continually, and he will satisfy your soul in the drought and make your bones fat. You will be like a watered garden. On the contrary, the most heavy of curses are saved for those who did not help God's people. We are a company professing ourselves fellow members of Christ, though we may be absent from each other by many miles, and our work may bring us far from each other. Yet we should still hold ourselves knit together by this bond of love and live in the practice of it. Otherwise, how will we feel the comfort and presence of Christ?
Well. Hey, the Puritan message. Very, very interesting. And like very, very communist sounding kind of stuff, if you ask me. Very, very far detached from that Puritan kind of message. But the Christian values themselves remain. And like whoever is going to be a savior of those Christian values, doesn't matter how pure or impure they are, has political force within the US. And so we have a religious populist movement that's moving through. And I don't think there's enough analysis done this. And I think like we as, revolutionaries, socialists and communists, whatever you want to call them, as materialists, we do really discount like the whole like religious fervor and like, how that like contributes to politics. And so I think it's an important and eye-opening lesson for us to like kind of remember that, like, once you involve large sections of the population in the political process, their motives and their political motives are ideological based, far more than like based on any material conditions, when they believe that they are in a situation of kind of fight and flight. And the message that is being portrayed at the moment is like an absolute kind of attack on all things that are sacred, and like a destruction of like the American empire, the American way of life, American values, all that sort of stuff. Being very, very interestingly being accelerated not just by like migrants and like liberals and like like their destruction of like cultural institutions, but like by the government itself, the government that has been basically built up by the people over like hundreds of years to protect the interests of the people and to preserve kind of the sovereignty of the nation, I guess you would say. But like that is almost public enemy number one in the current age. And like once the government has abandoned protecting these core kind of Christian values, then like it suffers the same fate as migrants and commies and liberals and all that sort of stuff. And it needs to be purged so purity can but once again be restored and America will flourish again. And so if you connect a large section of your population connects the flourishing of the people to kind of a conservative / like purely religious ideal, whether they are religious or not, but it's part of their culture, like that is a force to be acknowledged, because religious populism seems to be something that is being wielded here behind the scenes almost, or even subconsciously, by like fuckwits like this guy. Like he really is a douchebag, this one. So, but like incredibly powerful in terms of the thought that they provoke. I really do think American, like the entire world would be different if American society mandated voting. And so like everyone had to vote, as opposed to it just being up to the individual whether they feel like voting or not. Compulsory voting all the way. That would revolutionize your society instantaneously. Because like factions like these people, the religious zealots, would not have as much power anymore. But like, yeah, we've come a long way from discussing the JFK assassination files, but I think it's all linked. And I'm going to leave it there for today. So thank you for coming on this journey. It's been a bit of a strange one, I'm not going to lie. We've been all over the place, but like I do think that they're all connected. And I appreciate the input from people, like commentary and like, alternate sources and things like that. So food for thought. If you believe it or you don't, like it still makes you think and see the world differently, and stuff to really consider. So Wings of Cheese, thank you. Jag, Marxist Dad, our number one censored contributor today. I think you get the medal. We should start giving out prizes for who gets censored the most, although there's probably a lot of runners in today's stream. I think Marxist Dad takes that mantle, so congratulations, you've been the most censored today. Jerry Poppins, thank you as always. You massively contributed today. Your sources have been incredibly insightful. 4IS, of course, as always. Ollie Atlas, thank you for joining. I don't think I have missed anyone. But yeah, thank you for joining. We're going to be back on Monday with another stream here on YouTube. And so, yes, enjoy your weekend, the most holy day, a holy time on the working calendar. So enjoy your reprieve from the clutches of capital. And we will pick up next week with some more interesting stuff, I'm sure, nonetheless. We may continue with our discussions on techno-feudalism and surveillance capitalism and the like, or we might move on to a new topic to discover together. So thank you very much for everyone for joining today. And until next time, please remember, I am, you are, we are a mystery. Enjoy. Thank you very much.